that you could do. All right. Right. We need to invite you. We're having a wonderful conversation here already on Government Connection. I'm Vicki Evans, and we're talking with a couple of people here from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. And highway safety means the reduction of traffic crashes, deaths, injuries, and property damages on public roads. In Arizona, the safety plan is developed and carried out by the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. And the bottom line of all this work and education and enforcement is that all of us live to drive another day safely on our roads and highways. So please welcome Officer Cecilia Lerma.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for being here. And Officer Lerma is she is the coordinator of the La Protectora program.
Yes.
And then we welcome Javier Herrera, who is the Administrative Services Officer with the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. So again, thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you
us.
for having
You
us.
bet. And, you know, Celia, I'm just going to turn to you first here. Or, you know, Javier, jump in. How does Arizona rate with other states when it comes to, I mean, I know statistics, I know you don't carry 1,000 of them in your head, but how do we rate when it comes to those issues of traffic fatalities, drunk driving? I can't even think of others.
You know, we actually had, our state had a pretty high number for DUI fatalities statistically for a number of years. And being that we're the second fastest growing state, there's a lot of issues that compound our problems here in the state of Arizona. A lot of new people coming to the state of Arizona. They have different driving habits from different states. And so it makes the issues a bit strenuous for our office, but luckily what we've actually been seeing over the past couple of years is a dramatic reduction in the number of fatalities we're seeing across the highways here in Arizona. As a matter of fact, in 2007, we actually saw a 18% reduction in fatalities, which was dramatic. I mean, it was amazing to see that, and actually the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration recognized us for that, and they actually said that we were one among 3 states that had the most dramatic drop in fatalities on highways, only second to California. The third one was actually Texas. So we're doing pretty well in our work that we're doing here in the state. And this year we're projecting actually another reduction of 14%. The initial figures are showing that.
And you're attributing this reduction to what? What are you doing that's either different or additional?
Really what we've seen with our office is traditionally some things that we had been doing in the past, which was largely just enforcement focused. We've revised that over the years, and now what we've done is we've actually brought up the educational component. And any person, actually, a psychologist once said that, in approaching our director, said that if you really want to change a driver's behavior, there's 2 things that you really need to do. And the first thing is high visibility enforcement, which we were already doing quite successfully. The second one is actually education, the educational component, which we were really top heavy on enforcement. And what we've done is actually done a lot to actually bring up the educational component. We have a lot more individuals in the office, project coordinators, are actually going out into the community doing hands-on grassroots work now to educate our community, which we weren't doing before. And in addition to that, our advertising spots, our paid media, billboards, commercials, radio spots. We're totaling about $1 million that we're spending a year on that paid media.
And we're talking about billions of dollars lost to Arizona's economy when you compile all the traffic fatalities and property gut loss.
Exactly, and the good thing important. I mean, Arizona, of course, is in a fiscal crisis right now, but that $1 million actually comes from federal government. It's the federal grants that we've applied for, and we've received federal funding for this. Right. So the $1 million has actually helped out dramatically, and then we really attribute that in conjunction with a lot of our partners that we've been working out in the community with to the reduction of fatalities. It's not just one agency that can do it all. It's a handful of individuals.
Yeah, right. So Cecilia, how do you manage? You know, you mentioned grassroots and education and a great staff. How does that all work?
Well, a lot of what we do is go out into the community and talk to people on a one-on-one basis.
Can you give me an example?
Well, a lot of times when we're talking about statistics and we're talking about national numbers, it's kind of hard for people to grasp. So it's just a way of changing things around. For example, all the information that Javier just gave you there's another way of looking at it. We're talking about Arizona and what's happening in Arizona, because I think all of our citizens are interested in their own state. So if you talk about a statistic, in Arizona, 3 people die from a collision every day. And when you compare it to the national average, it's 115 people that die every day. And when you talk about fatalities, one person dies in Arizona every 6.5 hours. Nationally, you're looking at a person dying every 13 minutes.
Wow.
So it just depends on how you pass that information on. It makes a difference.
It sure does.
And really to dovetail off that, and making notion of making the reference to the statistic of 115 people dying a day in the nation. You know, that's the equivalent of a small plane going down every day. And I'm pretty sure that if everybody recognized a small plane going down every day in this nation, that all of a sudden all flights would be put on hold until we fix the problem. But when you see it in smaller areas, you know, 3 deaths here, 2 deaths here, it's harder to comprehend. So it's important for us as an office to go out there at a grassroots level and bring this down to a level of in layman's terms, exactly what it means. You know, have you ever had a loved one that was impacted? Did you ever have a loved one that was killed by a drunk driver? Or have you ever lost a child because they weren't properly restrained in a child seat? And they say, oh, no, but no, I had a family member that had that happened to them. Then they can relate and realize what we're trying to do and save lives.
Right. Are you finding that, pardon me, excuse me, are you finding that, do you do a lot of work with school-age children?
We do. We think that the youth are the future of our highway safety reduction. So we're trying to impact them at an early age and teach them that they need to be in the back seat, they need to have their safety belt on, they need to be in their booster seat. They even need to remind mom and dad that they need to wear their safety belt
They're really
also.
good at that too, aren't they?
They are. They're excellent at that. They're very safety conscious.
I know. I was one of those parents when mine was younger that had to be reminded occasionally.
Well, I remember when I was a kid in kindergarten. I remember my kindergarten teacher telling me, "Make sure when you guys go home, you put your seatbelts on." And you know, and that it gets back to that basic level of basic principles of putting your seatbelt on, being in a child safety seat. To make sure that you're secure. And I mean, when we start getting to teen drivers, we'll be talking about a little bit later, there are some specific, unique factors that are impacting teen drivers that we really need to make sure we address and realize that, hey, we need to hit them at an earlier age so they realize that, hey, I shouldn't be texting on a cell phone while I'm driving.
Right.
So,
right. Well, let's talk about also one thing that I think has been effective, if perhaps not real popular. But let's just talk about the effectiveness of and I call them the speed detection camera. I'm not sure if that's the right way, but talk to us about how those are used, what they are, you know, start us, you know, just describe the whole program to us.
The speed detection camera actually it's a vehicle, and everyone's probably seen them around here in Tucson. Different agencies have them. TPD has them. DPS is really known for them as well.
Which is Department of Public Safety.
Department of Public Safety. They actually have 40 mobile units that they put around through the whole state. And really with a speed detection camera, what that is essentially it's a radar. It's a mobile radar unit, and it can sense just like a cop with a gun on a motorcycle. He's able to tell if you're speeding, and as you're approaching, they'll snap that flash of the front of you and the back of you as you're passing that vehicle. And at which point, actually, through the Department of Public Safety, they've actually got officers assigned to it. Those cases and actually review the files, and they can go ahead.
So it takes your picture, right?
It takes your photo.
Those little flashes are
taking your photo, taking pictures of your license plates. Exactly it. So they know exactly if you're. They can actually look into a database and actually send you the ticket from that point out. Now, with the speed detection photo enforcement with the red light runners, that's a bit different. With the red light detection systems, those are actually timed systems. So actually, if you're in a certain area at a certain point, for instance, if the light is yellow, and you're going to go red pretty soon, and you're going right there, and you're not halfway through that intersection, it's going to take a flash of you, and so that's more of a time thing, and it senses actually where the cars are at that point, so it's able to
say that to me again. So if it's yellow,
if the light goes from green to yellow,
right?
You better go ahead and just stay if you're out of an intersection that has photo enforcement, because if you're less than halfway through that intersection, when that light's yellow, it's going to take a photo of you, more than likely. So,
okay.
And it works the same way. It takes a picture of the front, takes a picture of the back, it has a picture of your license plate, and they'll send you a ticket through the mail.
All right. What about? Let's talk about how effective this has been as a tool to reduce speeding and fatalities. Yeah.
And it's actually, I think it's one of the attributable factors of why we're seeing a reduction in the state. AAA just recently came out with an advisory to travelers that if you come to Arizona, be aware that there's photo enforcement. We've got some of the most stringent laws in Arizona, and we're actually seeing, I think, success from the fact that we have these photo enforcement units, because as it is, we're stretched thin for a lot of these enforcement, for a lot of these officers. There's a lot of activities that these officers need to be doing out there, and this is just another tool that we have in order to stop a lot of speeders or red light runners, which have caused a number of collisions and fatalities in the state. There was actually a study that was done out of ASU, and they actually did some studies on the freeways in Phoenix where they have photo enforcement. And they saw dramatic reductions in the number of collisions and incidents happening in those areas.
And that's because people are being more just driving more carefully?
Exactly.
Well, the speed is being reduced. You know, the speed system measures a vehicle passing through the in-road sensor, and if it travels at the over the threshold or over the threshold, which is 11 miles per hour, it'll activate a series of images. So it's definitely reduced the speeding in those areas, and it's been very dramatic.
So if you can go, so when you talk about the threshold, if I'm in a 35 mile per hour zone and I'm traveling 46,
it'll activate it.
It'll activate
it at 46 and over.
And over.
Now, it is different in school zones. It's 6 and over.
Okay, and a school zone is 25, correct?
Well, it's 25 as you're approaching it, and then 15 when you're in the school zone.
Yeah, when you go through. Yeah. Yep. So we talked about the red light, and the red light cameras that you've just described. Now, is that up to each? Is that a state-directed program, or is that each? Like in Tucson, we have TPD's running that.
It is local municipalities that do that. So, for instance, that is a City of Tucson project, the TPD. They handle the red light running cameras. Of course, they contract out to another agency to do that, but that is a local municipality one. The only state-run program for a type of photo enforcement would be the one through DPS, Department of Public Safety, which is the 40 vehicles around the state for speeding.
And we are talking about highway public safety, the Highway Safety Plan. And if you'd like to learn more and check out some more information, please contact the Arizona Office of Highway Safety, and the director is Richard Fimbres. And that office is located at 310 South Williams Boulevard, and what's the suite number?
315.
Guess who doesn't have her glasses? Thank you. 315. Phone number is 790-5124. That's 790-5124. And the website is azgohs.gov. That's azgohs.gov. And those days that depicted by that touring group there,
Yes.
and a Model T or
Model
an A.
T Ford there, yeah.
That was the day when there were more saguaros in the state than there were people, and those days are long gone, and we need to.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about because being a local Tucson native, a big Wildcat fan, of course, and Button Salmon, the man who said "bear down" for the Wildcats, was a quarterback for the U of A football team, and at the time, I think that was the early 1950s, 1918, around there. He was actually killed because of a motor vehicle collision at the time. So, and those last words were "bear down" while he was in the hospital. So the fatalities have been around a long time. Ever since automobiles have been around, fatalities have been around.
Well, go ahead.
Vicki, I'd like to just take a moment to just recognize the fact that the Governor's Office of Highway Safety is a really, really small agency, but it has dedicated, talented people that are working really, really hard to try to make a difference in Arizona, beginning with our director, Richard Fimbres, Javier Herrera, who is his administrative services aide. We have a traffic safety resource prosecutor, Beth Barnes, who is a attorney out of Phoenix. We have intense Spanish immersion, that is overseen by Martin Moreno. We have
just a great group
nationally renowned programs for impaired driving that are overseen by Phoenix officer Dan Molyneux and DPS officer Alan Haywood. We have an excellent occupant protection program that's overseen by Phoenix police officer Arnie Cuellar. And it's just a really small group that's just really dedicated and doing everything they can to make a difference in that office.
And you brought up something when you said that Latino, immersion. Is does the are sectors of our population perhaps more affected by lack of education about highway safety? I mean, it makes a difference perhaps where you're living. Am I saying this correctly or getting my thought across to you, Javier?
Yes, okay, and actually, if we make a point, we're talking about certain demographics in Arizona. 30% of Arizona is actually Latino, and when you start looking at the demographics of Latinos and how they're affected, number one reason of deaths for Latinos ages 1 to 44 is motor vehicle collisions. And with that in mind, we're disproportionate in comparison to other demographics in the state with the number of deaths we're having. So our office has recognized that, and so we've taken a much more proactive approach in trying to address that with, of course, Officer Cecilia Lerma's position with La Protectora, working directly with Latinos and educating them. My position working directly with Spanish media and getting our word out to the Spanish-speaking populations. And also with Martin Moreno, who works with our Spanish immersion program, educating officers so that they know how to actually conduct traffic stop and speak to individuals that are monolingual, speaking Spanish only, and do basic instructions so that they would understand what they need for during a basic routine traffic stop. So there are a lot more proactive things that our office is doing, once again, just to get to those levels, so getting to those populations that need these special services. So. Right.
Well, let's talk about another special program that you have, and that's teen driver safety. Yes. And I know there have been some recent changes. I'm not sure what they are, but
no problem. Yeah, I'll be happy to let you know. We just recently passed, actually, the Teen Driver Safety Act. It just went into effect back in July 2008. And essentially what the Teen Driver Safety Act is a graduated driver's license law. And really with graduated driver's license laws, what we saw in other states around the nation was a dramatic reduction, actually, in the number of teen fatalities when these laws were implemented. And essentially what the Teen Driver Safety Act does is it gives a teen more time behind the wheel for practicing.
Going from what to what now?
Okay, what we're looking at here is actually with the actual driving hours, you're actually looking from increase from actually 10 hours of nighttime driving. There's actually an increase now to up to 30 hours of nighttime driving. Everything has to be actually signed off by a supervisor. Not a supervisor, but by a parent. You can't have actually any more than one person under the age of 18 with them in the vehicle for the 6 months while they have this graduated driver's license.
Is that like the learner's permit, or does that come after the learner's permit?
It comes after the learner's permit.
So you got your license, but it's now this graduated
driver's license, exactly, yeah. And essentially what it was is to increase the hours of daytime driving, increase the hours of nighttime driving, and actually your parent or legal guardian has to sign off and say that you've actually done these number of hours, and then MBD, after 6 months, they'll go ahead and give you your regular license. Now, the important thing to note with this is that if there is any type of sort of violation that occurs during these 6 months, let's say you're caught with someone more than one person under the age of 18.
Parents are in trouble too?
Parents don't get in trouble, but the teen has to kind of restart all over again. Okay. So they can re-extend the period for the students driving until they recorrect their habits. So they do get a citation for anything, breaking any type of law for that matter. They can get a re-extension of that period.
All right. So. All right. And before we go on, we want to make sure that we remind you of next week on Government Connection, and we will be talking to the Arizona Cesar Chavez Coalition, and it's the Cesar Chavez annual march is at the end of this month, and we'll be talking a lot about this gentleman who was born in Arizona and became such a figure of for really truth and justice and equality. So please join us March 18th at 6 p.m. for Government Connection. And now we're back with Cecilia Lerma and Javier Herrera from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. In conjunction with some of the new things coming in like teen driver safety and some of the issues we've talked about, lots of different and changing things about drinking and driving. And I'm thinking specifically about, I've heard about it, ignition lock or lock, what is that? Or kind of a breathalyzer, that you can have, that you have to have when you're driving.
Exactly.
How do these things work?
Yeah, what you're referencing is actually the Certified Ignition Interlock device, which we just call CIID for short. And essentially, with our laws have gotten a lot more stricter regarding DUI penalties in the state fines have gone up. The amount of time that you're going to be in jail now for first-time offenses, second-time offenses has gone up. And one of the requirements now is the placing of a certified ignition interlock device on your vehicle. And essentially the way it works is that you have an agency, which Department of Motor Vehicles actually has a listing of these agencies who are able to put this device in your vehicle. You'll have this device placed in your vehicle, and actually what you need to do when you get into a vehicle, anytime before you start it, you need to pick up the device, breathe into it, and if it registers any sort of alcohol, the vehicle will be
Javier and Cecilia, is this after I've been pled guilty and this is part of my sentence? Is that how this works?
You have to have been convicted of that DUI in order to have that mandated to be installed in your vehicle.
Okay, so this is basically part of the sentence then, when you think about it, right?
Is.
Okay.
And back in 2007, well, prior to 2007, you were mandated to have the ignition interlock device in your vehicle if your blood alcohol content was a 0.15%.
And what's the legal limit here?
It's a 0.08.
0.08.
But since then, the law has changed, and now if you're just convicted of a DUI, of a first-time offense, first DUI, you're mandated to have that ignition interlock device in your vehicle.
And the time it's there depends, or is it pretty standard? I mean, how long do you drive with that?
If it's a minor consumption, there can be a set time limit. But if it's someone over 21, I believe it's a year.
Yes, 12 months. Correct.
Okay, and that's a first-time.
First-time conviction. Has to be a conviction.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot more strict. So you're not going to really look cool, if you will, having a certified ignition interlock device in your car. You can imagine your problems going out on a date, if you will. So.
But again, you know, I would imagine you're educating the public about this. But again, the drop in traffic deaths due to drunk driving, all of that is bearing out these precautions and safety techniques, correct?
Correct. Yeah, these are all tools, and that's the important thing to note is that if we're going to become successful in our battle against DUIs and trying to save lives out there, we need to utilize these tools. And so these are things that we've seen from around the nation. Some other states have used some of the things we're doing them for the first time. You know, we've been very innovative in, for instance, photo enforcement that we were talking about earlier. Our state has been very innovative in what we've been able to do here in our state, and other states are looking to us as to how we do that. Some of our programming that Cecilia was referring to, it is nationally renowned. A lot of our DITEPS trainings.
DITEPS?
DITEP, exact definition of a DITEP would be, Cecilia, I don't know if you could take that over for me. But I always forget the acronym on that one.
I know, there's always a lot of acronyms. I'm not the
SFST, State Field Sobriety Training. It's strategic field sobriety training for people that have DUIs. Those are things that we've done and we've implemented, and our programs have been so successful that other states say, come to our state, train us. Our Spanish immersion program, the same thing. Our Martin Moreno has traveled to other states because they want to have their officers trained into how to speak Spanish with their population. So these are all tools that we have in our office that we want to make sure we keep utilizing.
You know, going back to the DUIs, every year we have 500 people dying as a result of impairment, and at least 1,000 people that are seriously injured as a result of it. So those are really high statistics.
And we, you know, unless you've been in that situation or with a family member or had that, you know, I think we can, you know, you can commiserate and empathize, but the domino effect or the ripple effect, how it affects a family or people, you know, who are affected by drunken driving is enormous, is devastating.
It really is.
It is. Well, let's talk about some other new laws. We don't have a lot of time left. We've talked about the implementing and the upgrading of the teen safety program. What about some other new laws that people should be aware of?
Well, there was a new law that was passed through legislation, and Javier, do you want to go ahead and talk about that one?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, what we actually have, the state implemented was actually the first DUI, OUI law, which is actually driving under the influence, operating under the influence. And that's pretty much what it is. It was actually something that was pushed strongly by the Governor's Traffic Safety Advisory Council, our office, as well as the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Because what Game and Fish were seeing at the time was that people were getting on their boats, on their waterways, and up in northern Arizona, it's a very popular thing. They were drinking their beers out there on the boat, and then what they were doing is they were either getting into a collision on the waterways, or they were actually getting back into their cars and driving somewhere, and so an incident would happen. And so exactly what it did is it actually provided an offense now that if you're actually caught on a waterway operating under the influence of a boat, you will actually get the same penalties as you would if driving under the influence.
So there's no drinking on a boat, basically.
Exactly.
Get caught
Zero
with it.
tolerance with it. Yeah.
Zero tolerance.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, we want you to have some contact information before we have to say goodbye. So let's take a look. We are talking to the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, and located at 310 South Williams Boulevard. That's Suite 315. Phone number 790-5124. And if you want to know and make sure and learn more and read about what we've been talking about, so you're up to date, please check out the website azgohs.gov. That's azgohs.gov. And we only have about a minute or so, Cecilia, but there's the seatbelt law too.
Yes, let's talk about that. You know, currently 20.1% of Arizona's population is still not buckling up, and that adds to 1.2 million people.
Wow.
That's still a lot of people that are not buckling up. And in these days of economic stress, you want to use your safety belt, you want to put your children in child safety restraints, you want to drive safely, you want to lower your speed, you want to get a designated driver, you want to do everything that you possibly can. It doesn't cost anything. But if you get into a situation where you're involved in a collision, or you lose a loved one, or you have to pay penalties, or you go to prison, it's just an added stress for your family.
And I know we've only got about 30 seconds, but if we could get a shot of this, and I'm reading the back, and it just says the Motorcycle Safety Advisory Council. So all about motorcycle safety also.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And helmets not mandatory yet in Arizona, or are?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, not a mandatory thing, but it's going to save your noggin if you fall off that bike. So you want to make sure that you survive a crash. Since
Right.
we highly suggest that you use a helmet at all times on a bike.
And as you said, the education component that the office has really put a lot of resources in, and that has proved so successful. And it's because of the dedicated staff of the Governor's Office of Highway Safety who are really working for us. Cecilia and Javier, thank you so much. We learned a lot today. Thanks.
Thank you so
Keep
much.
up the good work.
Thank you.
You.